Familiar faces continue to make Netflix their home for action movies. Whether it be Chris Hemsworth in Extraction or Charlize Theron in The Old Guard, Netflix has been making summer 2020 the year of the streaming blockbuster. Their newest entry, Project Power, asks the question, what would you do if you had a superpower for only 5 minutes at a time? I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. All right, this is Ronald, and I am on the couch after watching Project Power. Project Power on Netflix, starring Jamie Foxx, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Dominique Fishback, Machine Gun Kelly, Rodrigo Santoro, Amy Landecker, and Courtney B. Vance. Directed by Henry Joost. It might be Henry Yost. I should have looked that up. Forgive me, Henry. And Ariel Schulman. And written by Mattison, Tomlin. So Project Power, the premise of the movie is that there is a pill in the streets that, when taken, gives the taker 5 minutes of superpowers, of temporary superpowers. Previews, I saw it, I was like, okay, this is an interesting new take on a superhero movie. And I saw that it was starring a couple of black people, which I was like, that's also interesting. Like I feel like black folks haven't gotten a host of superhero movies, so it's always nice to see black folks in something new. And I liked the cast. Again, Jamie Foxx, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Dominique Fishback. I've seen less from her, but I've seen her in Random Acts of Flyness. That's the only thing I've seen her. I know she's been in other things, but that's what I've seen her in, as well as this. This movie, okay, so it's a Netflix movie, and this felt more on brand with what Netflix has actually done than some of its better work. And to put that in perspective, I mean, like that movie Bright that came out a couple of years ago, starring Will Smith and Joel, don't remember his last name. Oh man. Don't remember his last name, but Will Smith was in it. I remember when that movie came out, and I remember watching it with my family. It was on Christmas because it came out on Christmas. I remember watching it and thinking, this movie isn't very good. Has a very interesting premise, but the execution is not doing anything for me. Watching Project Power, I felt that way here. I felt like this was an interesting premise. And the premise to me felt based on those Facebook little surveys that you see. It's just a picture and it'll be like 9 different pills. And it'll be like, this pill gives you superpower. This pill makes you fly. This pill makes you strong. This pill gives you all the money in the world. Like it. And so I think this feels like some people were sitting around saying, what if you had a pill that gave you superpowers, but only for 5 minutes? And I think rather than exploring the pills themselves, they decided, which I think is interesting enough. I think the pills and the manufacturing of the pills is interesting enough, and the effects that it has on people, how it works, why people are using them, the interesting ways in which people would use them. This film elects instead to kind of tell a story that's set in a pill universe, which I don't know if that's what I wanted. I don't know if that's the movie I wanted. So instead we have Jamie Foxx, who's on a quest to find his daughter. We have a cop in Joseph Gordon-Levitt who is trying to protect his city, the city of New Orleans, and we'll get to that in a second. And we have Dominique Fishback, who's just trying to make it on the streets. She's supposed to be a high school student, which I felt like had no weight on the story whatsoever. It almost seems like it would have made more sense if she either would have dropped out of high school or had graduated already. But to have her still be in high school just seemed like they were just trying to tell us how old she was, which I feel like they could have serviced with one line. But all of that being said, you have this story where Jamie Foxx, these three people basically happen upon each other and then end up going on a bit of a journey / quest, whatever, together, which it's fine, but it's not executed well. Like I'm sitting here watching the story and I'm like, I want to know more about these pills. I want to know like how they made them, which they kind of give a little bit of service to, but not much. I wanted to know exactly what happened to a person, because they didn't really clarify what happens when a person takes the pill and then what powers they get. It wasn't until later in the movie, and I'll tell you this because they don't explicitly state this. Later in the movie, they kind of reveal that once you take the pill, you get the same superpower over and over again. It's not a different superpower. You get the same one, which I'm like, that is not as interesting because you don't get to pick and then you get the same one every time you take the pill, and you have to get new pills in order to do it. So I'm like, I don't know, man. In a lot of ways, it's like kind of like the worst kind of superpower to have. So watching it, I was just like, I don't know. And then there was a couple scenes in which, they start the movie and they drop all these pills on a particular city, New Orleans in this case. And I'm telling you, this is 5 minutes in, so it's not a spoiler. 5 minutes in, they start showing all these reports of what people are doing with the pills all around the city. Oh no, there's chaos and these guys are running around. These guys are doing this. Oh my God, what's going on? And I'm like, now that's interesting. Tell me what they're doing with those pills. Like I want to see what makes them decide to do it. And then if they say, all right, 5 of us are going to take the pill, we're going to go rob this bank. I'm like, yes, show me that. Show me how that breaks down, what that looks like, and that's not really what they did. We're zoomed all the way in on one story. And in that story, there's not a ton of pill taking. Like there's some, but it's not even like, it's not very interesting or cool. And it reminded me of 2 other movies that came out in the early 2000s. One was called Push and the other one was called Jumper. Push was starring Chris Evans, and Jumper, and this was pre-Captain America Chris Evans. As a matter of fact, I think it might have been pre-Fantastic Four or before the second one, but after the first one. And then Jumper starring Hayden Panettiere. That's Hayden Christensen. That's right. And both of those movies were, the previews were so cool. I was like, oh, these look really cool. But then you watch them and you're like, this execution is terrible. You guys have like people, superpowered humans, like do some cool stuff with it. It almost reminds me of like the first few X-Men movies where you have Wolverine, and I'm like, are we going to see this guy slash up some stuff or what? Like you have a man with claws that comes out of his hands. Like, are we ever going to see him just like run through something? And it wasn't until they made the final Wolverine movie where they give it the R rating that we actually get the, yes, all right, he's cutting through stuff. Yes, this makes this, I can I can understand. It makes sense. So I'm saying all that to say that watching this movie, the premise was solid, but the execution was just not good. Like they had me. If you watch the preview of this movie, you are going to want to watch the movie. Like you watch the preview and you're like, oh, that's interesting. But I'm telling you right now, I've watched this movie and I can tell you it's not very good. And it's strange because I love the actors in it. I loved every actor that was. I enjoyed all of their performances. I did not like the dialogue, which was weird because I'm like, the stuff they were saying wasn't good, but the way they were saying it was executed well. So I'm like, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was probably doing the least amount of work in this because he was just doing his Joseph Gordon-Levitt thing where he kind of like runs around and then like says intense lines and like, come on, follow me, get to the car, we gotta go, like that type of thing. So that wasn't very impressive. And I'm saying it's not very impressive based on his body of work. I think he's more than just a guy who runs and says his lines intensely. This is a guy that he has a full range of emotions. But watching this, I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just getting the running and jumping get to the chopper, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is, I don't know, I wasn't really here for it. So yeah, just continuing to watch it, I think Dominique Fishback did a great job. I enjoyed watching her. specifically, I think she just brought a bit of, there's some vulnerability to the role, and it was nice to see a role that would have, honestly, that would have been normally been done by a black dude. That would have been like a young black dude cracking jokes and stuff. That would have been this role, but they gave it to a black woman, which I'm sitting there watching and I was like, yeah, no, like I get it. I get exactly what you guys are doing here. It's a bit of a typecast role, what she's doing. She's being the person on the street, the kind of the emissary to New Orleans, if you will. So I enjoyed her. And I enjoyed her acting. I thought she had a bit more to do in the movie, showed a bit more range, but there was a couple of writing choices and directing choices that I'm like, I don't know if that's how I would have done it with her. Especially if you have someone that can do well, that's standing up against Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, I think you could give her like a little bit more, or you can give her backstory a little bit more. You can even make her more tough. I think there was a couple times when they made her a little more wide-eyed, maybe even a little more vulnerable than she needed to be. And I'm not saying, and granted, like, again, she showed vulnerability, which was nice, and it brought that sense of vulnerability to the movie, but I don't know how much of it was absolutely necessary sitting there watching it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel conflicted about it because I enjoyed her role, but I felt like she got hamstrung by the script, if anything, or the direction. But she did the best she could do with it. I feel like the acting, I feel like all of them did the best they could do with the scripts that they were handed. The pacing is weird. The dialogue, again, is a little bit contrived. I had zero emotional investment, inconsistent character development. And they seem to be doing a job where they're telegraphing how much they love the city of New Orleans, which I understand the love for New Orleans. And I think that it's important to, film there, revitalize the economy. After the stuff that happened in Katrina, there's still places that are still recovering from what they lost during that period of time and the gentrification that then came afterwards. So when I think about that, I think that it's important that they show this kind of like little love letter to New Orleans. But with that being said, it just seemed like they were doing a lot of things that were very on the nose. At one point, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is running around in a Steve Gleason jersey on the New Orleans Saints. And if you Google Steve Gleason, he's kind of like a local hero of New Orleans, blocked a punt upon their return to the Superdome after Katrina, which was amazing. But just sitting here watching it, I was just like, this feels just so on the nose. Like, yeah, isn't New Orleans great? We love New Orleans. It felt very virtue signaling. And this is something that was done by two white dudes. So it almost felt like, I don't know whose idea this was to do it in New Orleans, but whoever's it was, they felt like they kind of had to double down on, like, yo, we love this city and we love this city, New Orleans forever. And I'm like, it was just very, it kind of just felt out of left field for me. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't like this movie. I would not watch it again. I'm probably going to forget it exists. I hope that Dominique Fishback goes on to a long career. Of course, we will see Jamie Foxx again. We will see Joseph Gordon-Levitt again. Even the directors of this movie, Ariel Schulman and Henry Joost. Both of them, I think, will go on to do other things. They did 2 Paranormal Activities. They did the Catfish movie. They have plenty of work. They will find other jobs. But this one felt like, sitting here and watching this one felt like a typical Netflix movie that I would expect, which is great premise, poor execution, straight to video. That's the kind of movie I expect from Netflix. But its last 2 movies that it came out with were fantastic, which was The Old Guard and Extraction. I thought those were both like well above board Netflix movies that I would have seen in the theaters if they would have released them there. So yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. If you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it. I mean, if you want to let your kids watch it, I think it's fine for kids. It's an action movie. There's not really, there's some gore, but it's like cartoonish gore. A lot of the powers are kind of stupid. Yeah. Let me chill. Because I feel like I'm about to go into a hate fest on this movie, and I'm trying to be professional here. So I think it was fine. It was good enough. Check it out. No, it wasn't. What am I saying? It was not fine. It was not good enough. This movie is a 2.5 of 5 stars movie. And I only give it a 2.5 because I don't think the actors did anything wrong here. So yeah. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at ohitsBigRon. If you like this show, check out our sister show, Time Well Spent. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.